Welcome to my channel Alien Signal. The galaxy had rules, not laws written by governments or enforced by fleets, but deeper rules, truths etched into biology, physics, and the limits of intelligent design. Across thousands of star systems, among countless sentient species, one such rule stood uncontested. No species could effectively wield two melee weapons at once. It wasn't a matter of culture. It was a matter of evolution. Most intelligent beings across the galaxy had evolved with asymmetry, one dominant limb for precision, the other for support. Neural pathways favored single-channel combat focus. Even species with multiple limbs lacked the coordination to balance offense and defense simultaneously with equal lethality. Simulations proved it. War academies taught it. Centuries of combat reinforced it. Dual-wielding was inefficient, unstable, and ultimately suicidal. So when humanity first entered the Galactic Assembly and began sharing its historical archives, the room had gone quiet, not with admiration, but confusion. Because humans didn't just dual-wield. They excelled at it. The training chamber aboard the orbital station Virex Prime was filled with observers. Representatives from 12 species had gathered to witness what was officially labeled as a human combat demonstration. Unofficially, it was a test, a polite but skeptical examination of a claim that most believed was exaggerated at best, fabricated at worst. At the center of the arena stood a girl. She looked unimpressive, small by most standards, even among humans. No visible cybernetic enhancements. No armored exoskeleton, just a slim figure dressed in dark training gear, her brown hair tied back in a loose knot. Her name was Mira Kade, and she was 17. At her hips rested two blades. Not identical, one was slightly curved, optimized for slashing. The other was straighter, heavier, built for thrusting. They were old designs by human standards, refined over centuries of warfare. To the watching aliens, they were unnecessary. One blade was enough. Two was absurd. A tall, four-armed observer from the Kethari delegation leaned toward the human ambassador. This is inefficient. Your subject will lose balance within moments. The ambassador smiled faintly. Watch. Mira stepped forward into the center circle. The arena lights dimmed slightly, and a series of holographic emitters activated around her. A voice echoed through the chamber. Simulation. Multi-vector hostile engagement. Difficulty level. Advanced. Combatants. 6. 6 figures materialized around her. They weren't simple drones. Each one mimicked a different species combat style, varying heights, limb counts, weapon types, and attack patterns. They moved unpredictably, reacting in real time. Mira exhaled slowly, her hands hovered near her blades. Across the observation deck, one of the delegates scoffed. 6 opponents with dual weapons. She will overcommit within seconds. The simulation began. The first attack came from her left. A tall, insectoid figure lunged with a segmented spear, aiming for her torso. At the same moment, a second attacker rushed from the right with a heavy cleaver. 2 directions. 2 threats. Exactly the situation dual-wielding was supposed to fail in. Mira moved. Her right hand drew first. The curved blade flashed upward, deflecting the spear with a sharp metallic crack. The force redirected just enough to throw the attacker off balance. At the same instant, her left hand drew the second blade. Not after, not delayed, simultaneous. The straight sword drove forward, intercepting the cleaver's path before it could complete its swing. Steel met steel with a jolt that echoed across the chamber. Gasps rippled through the observers. 2 blocks. 2 different angles. Perfect timing. But Mira didn't stop there. She pivoted. The curved blade flowed in a wide arc, turning defense into offense, slicing across the insectoid attacker's limb. The simulation flickered where the blade passed, registering a disabling strike. Her left blade followed through, not mirroring, but complementing. While the first attack forced space, the second exploited it, thrusting into the opening created by the deflection. Two motions. Not identical, not symmetrical, complementary. That was what the galaxy had never understood. Dual-wielding wasn't about using two weapons the same way. It was about using them differently at the same time. The remaining four attackers closed in. One leapt from above, another circled behind, the others pressed from the front. To any observer, it looked like chaos. To Mira, it was rhythm. She stepped forward, not backward. Her blades moved in opposing arcs, one intercepting a downward strike from above while the other spun behind her back to parry a surprise attack from the rear. She didn't look at the second attacker. She didn't need to. Her body knew. Her left hand acted independently, guided by trained reflexes and neural pathways that had been drilled into her for years. Human brains, it turned out, were unusually adaptable. They could learn to split attention. Not perfectly, not without effort, but far beyond what other species considered possible. Mira had spent years honing that ability. Now she let it loose. The arena became a blur of motion. Blades flashed like streaks of light, each following its own purpose. One weapon controlled space, wide arcs, defensive sweeps, redirections. The other delivered precision, short thrusts, targeted strikes, lethal efficiency. Together, they formed something the observers had no framework to understand. Not two weapons, one system. An attacker rushed her head-on. Mira met it directly. Her right blade caught the incoming strike, locking it in place. Instead of disengaging, she held it there, using strength and leverage to trap the opponent's weapon. At the same time, her left blade slid under the guard and drove upward into the opponent's core. Disable. She released the lock and spun, immediately transitioning into the next engagement. No hesitation, no wasted motion. Impossible, whispered one of the delegates. But the data didn't lie. Sensors tracked her movements, her reaction times, her neural activity. She wasn't guessing. She wasn't improvising blindly. She was processing multiple combat threads simultaneously, and acting on all of them. Two attackers remained. They adapted. Instead of striking separately, they coordinated. One feinted high while the other targeted her legs. A classic anti-dual wield tactic. Force the user to choose. Upper or lower. Block one, get hit by the other. Mira didn't choose. She split. Her right blade snapped upward, intercepting the high strike. Her left dropped low, catching the incoming sweep before it could connect. For a brief moment, she stood between two attacks, both blades engaged, both holding the line. It should have been a deadlock. Instead, she turned it into an advantage. She shifted her weight forward, pushing against the high attacker while simultaneously twisting her lower blade, redirecting the low strike off course. The imbalance broke both opponents' stances. Mira stepped through the gap. Two strikes. Two clean hits. Both attackers dissolved into flickering light. Silence filled the chamber. The simulation ended. Mira stood alone in the arena, breathing steadily, her blades lowered but still in hand. No dramatic pose. No flourish. Just stillness. Up in the observation deck, no one spoke for several seconds. Finally, the Kethari delegate broke the silence. This violates established combat theory. The human ambassador nodded. Yes. How is it possible? The answer came not from the ambassador, but from Mira herself. Her voice carried clearly across the chamber. We don't think of them as two weapons. She raised one blade slightly. This controls. Then the other. This kills. She lowered both. And sometimes, they switch. Another delegate leaned forward. But your neural limitations, Your species should not be able to process simultaneous attack vectors at that level. Mira tilted her head. We can't, she said simply. Not at first. A pause. That's why we train. The ambassador stepped forward, addressing the room. Humans aren't born capable of this. It takes years of conditioning, building independent motor control, training each hand to operate with partial autonomy, rewiring instinctive reactions. He gestured toward Mira. She started at age 6. Murmurs spread through the crowd. For most species, the ambassador continued, efficiency is about minimizing variables. One weapon, one focus, one solution. He smiled slightly. Humans solve problems differently. Mira sheathed her blades. We don't remove variables, she said. We learn to handle more of them. The implications settled heavily over the room. If one human could do this, how many others could? And what did that mean for warfare? The Cathari delegate finally spoke again, quieter this time. If this capability were applied in real combat scenarios. It has been, the ambassador replied. He tapped a control panel. A new holographic display appeared, battle records from human history. Footage of soldiers, warriors, and fighters across centuries using dual weapons in real conflicts. Different styles, different techniques, same principle, 2 blades, 1 mind. Mira looked up at the observers. You thought it was impossible, she said. A small smile touched her lips. We just thought it was hard. And in that moment, the galaxy understood something fundamental. The rules they believed were universal were only limitations they had accepted. Humanity hadn't broken the rule. They had simply refused to believe in it long enough to overcome it. From that day forward, combat doctrines across the galaxy began to change. Not overnight, not easily, but slowly, carefully, other species began to experiment, to test the boundaries they once thought absolute. Most failed, some improved, but none reached the level of fluid, controlled chaos that Mira had displayed. Not yet, because dual-wielding wasn't just a technique. It was a mindset, a willingness to embrace complexity instead of avoiding it. A belief that limits weren't fixed, they were negotiable. And somewhere, back on Earth, young trainees picked up their first 2 blades. They struggled, they stumbled, they failed, just like Mira once had. But they kept going, because humans had already proven something to the galaxy. No species fights with 2 blades. Until one decides it can. Thank you for listening. Subscribe for more cinematic science fiction stories.